Are you the fanatic we're looking for? Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast, brought to you by the Draft Professor. The Draft Professor is the only interactive and dynamic mock draft simulator. Dynamic means that the picks from one mock draft will influence the players that team selects in the next mock draft. This can be done with a first-round challenge. This can be done with a second-round challenge. This will be done with any mock draft from the Draft Professor. In addition, the Draft Professor has rank players functionality, allowing you to rank players and build your own big board and then compare your board to that of other users at the Draft Professor. In addition, the Draft Professor has draft a team functionality. This allows 2 or more users to snake draft a team of 22 players from the rookie pool, and then you can debate which players you like at which position and why. Thank you for tuning in to this podcast. This episode will begin shortly. Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast. We are coming at you today with a lot of linebackers. But before we do that, we have Cole coming back, we have Dean coming back, and Noah, this is your first podcast with us. Welcome. How you doing, Noah?
I'm doing great. How are you, Jim?
Oh, we're doing pretty good. Cole, how are things down your way?
I'm doing good. How are you, all of you guys?
Amazing.
Doing great.
And Dean, it's been about 2 or 3 weeks, but good to have you back after a holiday. So thank you.
Yeah, I've been down in North Carolina, but I had a 7-hour train ride back today, and I'm ready to talk about some of these guys.
Cool. So linebackers are one of my favorite positions to cover for a couple of reasons. First of all, very few channels cover more than 10 linebackers. We're about to give you about 19. And these aren't necessarily even the best 19. These are the linebackers in the Hula Bowl and the Shrine Bowl. In addition to that, if you did not know, on average, 25 linebackers get drafted every year. Now, a lot of them are going to be rounds 4 through 7, but they're filling out a spot on NFL rosters for special teams. Most teams carry 5 or 6 linebackers, and they'll play 2. So those last 3 or 4 linebacker spots on the roster fill a critical special teams role. So what we're going to do is dive in to the Hula Bowl and the Shrine Bowl linebackers, and we'll talk about them a little bit. If you have questions, throw them in the chat. You can see the list above, and then there's this list from one of the bowl games.
That one's Shrine, yep.
This is the Shrine list. This is the Hula Bowl list. And the first linebacker we're going to talk about is DeRicky Wright. So, Noah, what do you want to tell us about DeRicky Wright?
So, funny enough, he's actually played safety mainly for Vanderbilt. He played safety mainly for Vanderbilt, but he is 6'4", 228, huge. I think he'll fit that rover/star role at the NFL level perfectly. I think he flashed some good zone coverage instincts, and he's got really good length to be that versatile coverage player at the next level. For being 6'4", this says 217. We'll go with that one. 6'4", 217. He's actually a pretty consistent tackler. He's a little high hips, so I think his fluidity needs to be a little matched at the next level. I would love to see him in the Shrine. I'd love to see him at the Shrine Bowl, play a little more man reps. I didn't see a lot of man at Vanderbilt. I think if he shows the fluidity to be able to stay latched in the hip pocket of receivers and tight ends, that will make him rise up significantly in the draft because he was primarily just in zone at Vanderbilt. But I think he did really good running the alley. I think he is a consistent tackler, versatile coverage player. Obviously, he offers great length and coverage, great size. He's a good linear athlete, not great fluidity or change of direction. He got burnt in over the top in 2 tapes I watched. But if you're not depending on him to play post or like half safety or something like that, and you're just putting him as like a buzz defender and you're rolling him down in that rover/star role, I think he's very comfortable in that role. And I think at the Shrine Bowl, he really just needs to have those man reps on display so teams can see how fluid he is in man coverage against receivers and tight ends. And I do think, honestly, he's a little overzealous in coverage sometimes. I think he tries to undercut crossers and digs a little too often, and he'll have stuff develop behind him. So I think that needs to develop and shore up at the next level. But honestly, he was a player that I have a fifth round grade on right now. If he were to, for me, primarily, it's just the man coverage reps. I really just want to see him in man coverage. I only really saw him in zone primarily at Vanderbilt. I want to see him be able to open his hips and stay lashed in that hip pocket and stay in phase with these receivers because he has great length. He showed the capacity to contest the catch point pretty accurately. Ball skills are okay. I do think his route anticipation is iffy, shoddy. But I think at that rover / star role, he has a real role in the NFL at the next level.
Cool. Thank you. So, Dean, Ruben Hippolyte from Maryland at the Hula Bowl.
Right. Ruben Hippolyte has been a guy who I've sort of been keeping up with for a few years now. Basically, he's been a fixture on that Maryland defense for a couple years now. I think he got some reps as far back as 2020 in those COVID years. So he's a little bit of a older prospect. He's mostly been playing weak side for Maryland in the will role. And I wanted to see when he goes to the Hula Bowl, I want to see him play a little more than just the will reps. I want to see how he can handle Mike. I want to see how he can handle carrying tight ends over on the edge, maybe doing a little less of the pass rush work. I mean, I've seen sites listed him at around 240. I've seen him up to 245. I've seen him down to 232. He's been a little bit of a weight fluctuator. I want to see what weight he's sticking at, and maybe that'll help him define a little bit more of a role in the NFL. And if he can drop to that 232 sector, I think it'll show a little bit more willingness to work as different types of linebackers in the NFL. And I think that'll help him find a path to getting drafted because I liked Hippolyte preseason. I thought he was a pretty good mover. I thought generally where he needed to clean up were his instincts. I think he's shown a little bit of progress on that over the year. He's gotten a little better about keying into when the run's coming and when the pass is coming. I felt like at times in the preseason he'd gotten fooled by the pump fake, but this year it's been a little more consistent with him. I feel like he's cleaned up some of those instincts. I want to make sure that continues to, higher end talent, maybe more consistent wide receiver groups at the Hula Bowl than maybe at some of the Big 12 teams he was playing up against, Big 10 teams he was playing up against. But overall, I liked Hippolyte. I sort of had him as a late round guy coming into the year, and I think he's improved on his stock. I also think he's one of the better athletes that's going to show up at the Hula Bowl in this linebacker class. So I think it'll be nice to see him show off, in comparison to this tier of guys where the Hula Bowl is sort of a place where these guys are fighting to prove that they're draftable and get some late round consideration. I think this is going to be a good place where he can set himself apart from the pack athletically if he can prove that he can show some sideline to sideline range. I think that's what I'm excited about seeing about Hippolyte. I've loved him as a player. I think he's been a good force for that Maryland defense, and I hope he shows out at the Hula Bowl for sure.
Okay. Austin Keys, Cole.
Yeah, so just going to start off, great size. He's filled out well. I have him kind of in that 6'3" to 6'1" range, more so than 6'2", and actually a little bit chunkier than 240. I have about that 248, 250 range from what I've spoken to. He's a thumper. You're going to get that size. He's physical. He's a great run defender. My concerns start to come in athletically. He feels a little stiff moving linearly, going in and out of his drops, kind of reading his keys and pass coverage areas, which is a point I want to kind of point out. I have in my notes here when he was at Ole Miss in 2021, I believe. He had a great grade. Something must have happened because it dropped off significantly in 22, 23, and 24. In 22, it dropped down to a 60 from a 85 previously in that 2021 year. So there is a little bit of consistency concerns within the play of Austin Keys. Like I said, he's a thumper. He makes tackles. He's strong. He can get off blocks averagely. His technique's questionable. I want to see him go to the Hula Bowl and just show that he has some coverage skills. Because while you can drop into a zone, into a hook flat or a hook curl, as a linebacker and kind of sit in the zone and make a play, he has almost zero ball production, which is concerning. I don't even think he has an interception. Dean or Noah can correct me if I'm wrong.
Man, I'm looking at the stat sheet right now. You're totally right.
Yeah. The ball production is concerning, especially as a Mike linebacker. I almost wonder if he should be kind of used as that Sam Will hybrid if a team does roll the dice on him at the next level. But overall, just I want to see him go to the Hula Bowl and show a little bit less of that stiffness in his hips, kind of wiggle around a little bit more in coverage. I have no doubt he can come into the league and be a really good special teamer for a team. Just fly down the field, especially with this new dynamic kickoff piece. He is very strong and has that really stocky build at 6 foot, 6'1", 250. It's just really concerning when you have a linebacker who has zero ball production over 4 or 5 years in college. So it is a red flag, but I do overall think that Austin Keys has some good aspects to his game, especially with that value he could add on special teams just due to his run stopping and tackling ability.
If I may add, he has added, if he's at the 250, you said, preseason, when I was looking at him earlier on some of the sheets I'd gotten, he was playing at around 230 a couple of years ago. He's up to 250. I was shocked he wasn't using, Auburn wasn't using him in that Sam Will role, like you said, because he seemed to bulk up for that purpose. I think McLeod was just sort of took that role from him. I was a little shocked. It seemed like they'd been prepping him all preseason. I think you're totally on base and wanting him to play some Sam and Will, and I hope he gets to do that at the Hula Bowl.
Yeah. And Auburn's an interesting case study with linebackers because Auburn has 4 linebackers that are playing in all-star games. They've got 2 that we're covering tonight, and we covered 2 with our Senior Bowl episode. So going back to that was probably a crowded linebacker room, and they had to find a way to get all 4 of them on the field. Yeah. So, okay. Next, Noah, do you want to do Kane Medrano from UCLA?
Yeah, so Kane Medrano, he's a 5th-year player, team captain for the UCLA Bruins. Really versatile player, played everything for them. Inside linebacker, slot, edge, D-line. I mean, they played him everywhere. And that versatility does show through. I feel like he's at his best in as a weak side backer. I like his coverage feel, honestly. I do think he has good fluidity a little bit. I think he's an alert coverage defender. He has an understanding of what's developing behind him, even though that could shore up and obviously become better with more play experience at the next level. But honestly, I really like his fluid moveset. I do think he needs to improve at the point of contact, really shocking and shedding, but I do think that he has accurate and well-timed hands to defeat blocks when he is trying to fill gaps. So I do think that there is potential there. Right now, I have him as a 7th-round grade, and it's mainly because at the East and West Shrine Bowl game, he needs to shore up his erratic tackling technique. He has a 28% missed tackle rate. I think he had 28 missed tackles on the season or something like that. Yeah, Dean, you could check for me if you want. But he coming to balance is a real issue for him. I feel like he's routinely in right positioning and he's at the right place at the right time to make plays. But I feel like he just coming to balance. I mean, he dives a lot, arm tackler. He's just very erratic when he's doing that. But other than that, I do like him a lot. It's just the lack of play strength at the point of contact is a concern for me. And then just the erratic tackling technique is something that he needs to shore up, especially as a 5th-year player. I just feel like that should be a little more ahead in his game, but I really do like his instincts. I feel like he's near the ball a lot of the times. I feel like he's put himself in position to make plays, and I do like the coverage versatility that he offers as that alert coverage player, but it's just the erratic tackling technique and the coming to balance is just too inconsistent for me to be a little higher on him. I think at the East-West Shrine, I think at the Shrine Bowl game, if he shows that he could just consistently wrap up with good technique and foot drive and take these guys down to the ground, he could be a riser because he's a pretty good athlete with a fluid moveset.
Cool. Power Eccles from North Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, this guy flies around the field. I thought of the guys I had to watch this for this podcast, he was the most athletic, probably going to run in the 4.5s range. Of course, that is due to the fact that he's probably sitting at around a little bit 2 inches and 10 pounds below his listed size. He's able to fly around the field because he's so light in the pants, which works for him because he's playing a lot of roving positions for that North Carolina defense, and he's doing a lot of pass coverage work. So getting around the field is great. It can result in some really cool pass coverage cleanup. He got a pick 6 this year that was fun to watch in the Wake Forest tape. I really enjoyed seeing him fly around the field, but you have to worry about that size, and that's the question I think he's going to need to answer at the Hula Bowl this year. Is that size going to prevent him from going up against NFL athletes with the sort of prowess that he has? Because North Carolina is a team currently I don't know how they're going to be with Belichick, but North Carolina is very willing to take a chance on these little guys who may not have the NFL size. Like we're talking about Willie Lampkin, who earned himself All-American guard honors, but he sits at 5'10", 285. That's not going to be an NFL guard at the next level as much as he can like rest on his PFF numbers. Eccles is sort of a lower case in that regard, and I think he's a little closer to NFL size and a little less prolific in the honors, but he's no slouch when it comes to pass coverage, but when it comes to run stopping, the size starts to show at the ACC level. I'm a little worried about how he's going to go up against these running backs in the Hula Bowl. There's some big guys. I think Corey Keener could take him down pretty easily. It's the guy from Cincinnati. And I'm worried that if he doesn't show up and doesn't start doing some really great run stopping work, scouts are going to have more material to write him off than I'd want, because I think Eccles can provide something really interesting as a roving Mike linebacker who's able to fly around the field and do some cleanup work. He's especially good in terms of recovery and tracking down people who have maybe gotten passed into the defensive back level. And if the safeties are sort of split to the sides, Eccles is basically the only thing that's going to stop a guy from running straight down the middle and going for a touchdown. I saw it happen a couple of times. He was able to play some cleanup just because he's that fast. But it's the question of, can he stop the run? Can he go up against these NFL athletes? I like to think he can because he's an NFL athlete himself, but I want to see it at the Hula Bowl. I want to see him take some guys down.
Jaheim Thomas. Cole, is this one yours?
Yeah. Every time I see a big linebacker, 6'4", 225, I get really excited. I'm going to pull up his stats really quick, but just kind of quickly going over him. I love his linear athletic ability. You don't see many guys kind of like 6'4" who don't kind of like move sideline to sideline and they're not clunky. I think Jaheim Thomas really does have some nice athletic ability to him at that bigger size at 6'4", 225. As for his coverage ability, I was kind of left wanting a little bit more, but I'm going to be fully transparent here. At that big, I'm okay with wanting a little bit more in coverage because you're going to have some room to grow there at that size. You're not like Power Eccles or some other guys later down the list where you're 5'11", 6 foot, 220, 215 pounds. You're 6'4", 225 pounds. He does need to fill out a little bit. Even in that picture there, he's kind of built awkwardly, and it's kind of weird to see when he's tackling. He's an okay run defender. I have a day 3 grade on Jaheim Thomas, and he did pop for me when I was watching Ricardo Hallman, for a podcast a week or two back. I want to see him go to the Hula Bowl, and I want to see him really show that he's stronger than what his weight says, because there were some times he couldn't get off blocks because he isn't that strong. His play strength isn't that good. I also want to go see him just win the one-on-one. I just want to see him show some coverage instincts that I didn't see or thought were lacking while watching him. So I think with all that said, this is a guy that you can come in. I don't think he can come in and be a Mike for you day one. He probably sure as hell can't come off the edge of the sand right now. He's not strong enough. But he can come in. He can be a developmental linebacker. I don't think he's going to come in and be drafted as high as Trevin Wallace was out of Kentucky last year. But this is a guy on day 3 I could definitely see ending up developing into a nice player for a team.
Cool. Dorian Mousey from Auburn. Noah.
Yeah, so this is the other Auburn linebacker, and honestly, I have a late day 3 grade on him, but I actually am quite fond of his play, quite fond of him as a player. I think he's a very high IQ, high effort player that wins at the point of contact, even at his size and lack of length. And well, maybe not I do think that he struggles to deal with climbing blockers and really defeating blocks when guys get into his frame and he's exposed. But I think that he does bring that tenacity and the violence in his hands, that he has the capacity to win those blocks. And I think that he has a really good understanding of reading keys and diagnosing plays and where he needs to be to kind of limit his deficiencies athletically. I think he's a okay linear mover. I don't think he's adept at moving laterally or backwards, but I do think that he has the really good mental makeup to work downhill and shoot gaps and knows where he has to be. But again, just like Kane Madrano, he also has a tackling consistency issue. misses a lot of his wrap ups. It's just coming to balance sometimes looks a little clunky for him, a little awkward. I think he just needs to shore that up with the hula bowl to show that consistent technique, because he is routinely near the ball at all times. And he has a really good understanding of where plays are going, where plays are flowing. He is routinely, consistently near the ball. It's just executing and capitalizing on that positioning needs to improve a little bit, because I really like the mental makeup he has. He's a very high IQ player, high effort player. 5th year, he's filled the stat sheet every single week for Auburn. And he was just a guy that I was very fond of. When I was watching Austin Keys, I actually ended up watching Dorian Mazu as well with him, because he was he popped pretty good for me on tape.
He's just one of those guys who's always in the right place.
Yes, always in the right place.
So Branson Combs, Dean, is this one you?
Yeah, this one's me. Branson Combs started out his career as a Southern Illinois Saluki. It's one of those FCS to Power 5 transfers that panned out pretty well for Wake Forest. I mean, they were happy to have him on the team. I think he earned second team All-ACC honors this past season. I think it's mostly off of the back of his instincts, and I think he showed up pretty well. I watched a couple of Southern Illinois highlight tapes just to see what he was like before Wake Forest. Just to see what appealed to him what appealed to Wake Forest in the portal to get him to move up to the next level. And I think a lot of it was those instincts. He also cut a little bit of weight in between his time at Southern Illinois and moving to Wake Forest, I think in an attempt to get him a little better athletically. I want to make sure that that's something that he's still the case on, that he still matches up to the other athletes at the Hula Bowl. I want to make sure that he's able to carry himself in coverage and match up against their group of tight ends, because that's something I'm a little concerned about with him, is his just general athleticism. I like where he tends to be at, and I like his size. I think his height is pretty good. I think he matches up well with tight ends when he's close in coverage, but if he's a little far away from the ball and a tight end's able to get leverage on him, it's a little ropey. For the most part, though, I think Branson Combs showed what he needed to as far as like draft prospects go. I think he profiles pretty well as a Mike guy. I don't think he's going to do a lot of work weak side. I don't think he's going to be much of a impact pass rusher or anything. I think you're really bringing him in as a rotational coverage player and just sort of hoping that he can, show that the cutting weight from one level to the other is going to both, it's not going to affect his tackling, but it is going to bring up some of his athletic concerns that some coaches are going to have for him. And it's going to be his path to coming into a role as a backup linebacker in the NFL. I think he's a guy who he's going to show up a little on special teams and is probably going to show up in some rotational reps, subbing out for some of the stars of the NFL. But I think it's definitely possible Branson Combs carves out a role for himself in the NFL, as long as he can show off some of that athletic ability from his cut weight, and just show off what earned him all ACC honors. I mean, his instincts are really strong. If you can get yourself in the right place before the ball gets there, your athleticism can be a little less of a worry if you can just supplement that with instincts. And I hope that's what Branson Combs can do. He
was a receiver too at SIU, right? That's what he came out of high school for?
Yeah, he played a little bit of wide receiver for him at Southern Illinois. And I think it probably is why some of that athleticism translated to the FCS level, but I think it's good they put him at linebacker ultimately, because he's about average for a linebacker. He would be damn slow for a wide receiver.
Yeah, I thought that same thing too when I was watching him.
Kareem Reed, is this Cole?
Oh, man, I love both the Utah linebackers. Not sure if Kareem Reed had any more eligibility. I know Lander Barton did. He was my guy for a while. Still is. Kareem Reed, heat-seeking missile, this kid. Oh, I just get pumped up talking about both these Utah linebackers. Just get tough, smart, sideline to sideline. You're not going to ask him to cover Brock Bowers down the seam. It's not going to happen. You're not going to put him in a Tampa 2 heavy scheme, especially as a Mike. It's not going to happen. He is not a straight line athlete, but this guy is a motherfucker on the field. He will run his face mask into your mouth, and he will make sure you don't want to get up. He has unprototypical length. It's not good. But because he plays so tough, his stack and shed ability right now in the Pac-12 and the Big 12, I guess now, it worked out. It's good on tape. He's a technician in the run game. He knows where to be. He fills holes. He has good gap discipline. You're not going to see him bounce away from gaps to make a splash play. He is a prototypical Mike linebacker. Put him in the game. He's going to make all the plays that you need to win. Super smart in coverage. Can make all the pre-snap reads you need him to make. Great read keys. Great footwork. He's not sloppy in and out of his drops. Sideline to sideline mobility. Kareem Reed just pumps me up because nobody speaks about him, but you watch him, and I know a lot of guys were watching Leonard Barton earlier in the year when PFF had brought him up in their linebacker ranking pod, and I was one of those people. And when I would watch and try to watch Leonard Barton, my eyes just kept going to Kareem Reed, and every single time I'm like, damn, this is a damn good player, and I'm gonna put my flag on him. This is my guy at the linebacker position. He's not big, he's not the fastest, he's not the most athletic, but he plays it the right way. So at the bare minimum, you're getting a good special teamer for 10 years. Whether even you could put him at gunner, you could put him at personal protector. I can just tell he loves football and he loves to hurt the opposing team. And that's just something I look for with my linebackers when I'm grading. It's a big part of my evaluation, and Kareem Reed does just that. I have a round 4 on him. It's it'll be around 3 after a good showing at the Hula Bowl, which I know he'll do with ease. But that's what I got on him, and I was so excited to get to him.
Awesome. So if I would have known that Cole's going to bring that kind of energy, Kareem Reed would have been the opening act. I'm just saying. Cole, that was awesome. And that's exactly what we try to do here, right? We're having fun, and it feels monotonous sometimes to go through like 19 linebackers, right? But I love that, Cole. I love it. You made a couple of the other podcasters smile too, so that was very well done. So, Jake Chaney from Wisconsin. Who had Chaney?
That was me. Okay, so Jake Chaney from Wisconsin. This is a high IQ, high effort run defender. He's got clean eyes with active hands, and truthfully, he has an understanding of where he needs to be on a play-to-play basis. He's definitely a little undersized, doesn't pose the best length that you want at the linebacker position to take on blocks at the point of contact, especially climbing blockers, and that does play into his lack of I do think he has an understanding of where he needs to be, but his gap integrity just kind of lacks because he gets moved at the spot very easily. I just think if at the Hula Bowl right now, he needs to show that he could take on blocks at the point of contact, especially climbing blocks, so he can maintain gap and leg integrity. Right now, he's getting kicked out way too often. He knows where he needs to be, but I just think he's 5'11", 222. If he plays with violence hands and that tenacity and uses that natural leverage to really jar guys when he shocks them, he can really improve his draft stock because this guy, I mean, he's not the most high-end athlete, but again, he has really clean eyes like Dorian Mazi. He knows where he needs to be. He knows what gaps he needs to fill. It's just a question of can he get there and will he get sealed or kicked out or washed down? Because truthfully, but for coverage, I mean, he's an okay coverage defender. He's just not athletically like anything special. Like moving backwards and laterally is just very shoddy right now. I mean, linearly, he's only an okay athlete, so I don't really think you're ever going to depend on him in a coverage role whatsoever. This is a guy that you want playing between the tackles, banging down in the trenches, but he just needs to improve his play strength, and I think an NFL weight room will benefit him mightily with that, truthfully, and I think when a coach gets his hands on him and teaches him really how to shock and shed, he can actually improve because he knows where to be. He knows where the ball is going. He's got very clean eyes, and he just needs the added capacity to supplement that to let him capitalize on these plays and his understanding of run concepts.
I don't love doing the helmet scouting thing with him, but he did remind me of the Wisconsin linebacker from last class, Njong Meta, for the Cameroonian guy, who's gotten some good play for the Cincinnati Bengals as a UDFA. Yep. I think he filled that role well, and I think maybe now that we've seen that Njong Meta can make a impact as a rookie rotational linebacker, maybe Chaney will get some love that he wouldn't have gotten coming out if he'd come out last year.
Yeah, like right now I have a priority free agent grade on him, but I think that he can make his way definitely into a draftable grade with a good Hula Bowl for sure. At least 7th round.
Okay, Nick Jackson.
Yeah, I've been on Nick Jackson for a while. There was a preseason where when he was at Virginia, I had a day two grade on him. Now going to Iowa, as much as that defense rules as like a coaching standpoint, I'm not sure it was the best choice for his draft stock because he ended up playing a second fiddle to Jay Higgins, who is just not someone you're gonna be able to get past in terms of college football linebacker talent. I'm not in love with Jay Higgins as a prospect or anything because he's slower than most, but I think Nick Jackson sort of provided the yin to Jay Higgins Yang in that regard, where he was a little bit faster, he was a little bit better of a straight line athlete than Higgins was, and I think at times he could show off some pass coverage abilities that where Jay Higgins was just a dog going down and taking on blocks and sacking and shedding. But that's what I want to see Nick Jackson at. I want to see what he can do if he's the headliner at a defense, which is what I really liked when he was at University of Virginia. He was the headliner for that defense. And I thought going to Iowa was a big mistake for him because when he is the main guy who's given a lot of responsibilities in run stopping as well, he looks a little bit better. He looks a little bit better of an athlete when he's asked to operate sideline to sideline. But he looks better operating downhill than he does operating sideline to sideline because he's a little bit more of a straight line guy. He has to have his hips forward to really get these runs going. And I want to see him bring back some of that University of Virginia swag that I remember seeing him before he transferred to Iowa. I want to see him do a little bit more run stopping work. I want to see him sort of be asked to be the Swiss Army knife of that defense as opposed to a situational linebacker that he was playing where he was sort of complementing what Jay Higgins did, but he wasn't always complementing his skill set. I thought they kind of had the same sort of role. Like if they were being both used to their best fits, they would have been doing the same thing. So I want to see him sort of get to play some of the stuff that Jay Higgins was taken away from him at Iowa, get to do some more run stopping, get to do some more downhill work, because I think that's where he shined as a prospect when he was at Virginia. And I think it got lost a little in Iowa. And I hope he can sort of turn it around because I think there is some really draftable talent here. I think there's potential for him to be one of those, like, we talk about like 25 linebackers getting drafted every year. Is that that's the average number? Yeah. I think he could be in that anywhere in that 18 to 25 range if he can try out the Hula Bowl. Maybe even get himself a Shriner Senior call up if he can show that he can be the alpha there. I think that game tape is going to do him well. I don't think it's just going to be practices for him. I want him to be seen as like the alpha in these game situations too. It just sort of depends on how the coaches are willing to use him.
Yeah, and his experience is nuts. He played like 72 games or something.
He was 20 tackles away from breaking the all-time NCAA record. I mean, he's going to go down in history. Wow.
Yeah, he's got some experience to him.
Mm-hmm. You want a guy with game reps.
Yeah, exactly.
Next player, Steve Linton from Baylor. Cole, is this you?
Yep. So 6'5", I have him a good amount heavier than 225. I have him on two accounts of 237 and 239. In a vacuum, the 40 I have written down is really good, but at 235, 240, it is not really good. I have it charted down as a 4.67, which as an edge rusher, he's not really a linebacker. He's more of an outside linebacker, edge rusher, tweener type of guy. At 247, he's not that fast. He has a good initial first step off the line. He's totally a 5 technique, wide 9, kind of someone you play off to the tight end who can kind of drop back into a flat. And if you're going to run quarters, kind of out like a 6-1 type of look where you chop your outside linebackers out. Just Linton, it's weird. I don't love the hybrid linebackers that it's like edge rusher, Mike, outside linebacker, edge rusher, whatever, like pure outside covers linebacker. This is a guy I want to see him go to the Hula Bowl and win some one-on-ones. He's a 6-year senior. He's older. And through 2019 to 2022 at Syracuse and Texas Tech, and including 2023 as well, I believe he only had 4.5 total sacks, which is concerning. I might have written that down and read that wrong, but that is what I have in my notes right now. Dean, you can correct me, or Noah, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
I'll look for you.
He doesn't really bring a whole lot of juice as a pass rusher. I like his reps where he's dropping back into coverage, and that's kind of where I want to see him be used, is like that 3-4 prototypical coverage outside linebacker role, and kind of that like Flores, Belichick type defense where they use their outside linebackers a lot more in coverage as opposed to using their linebackers more as edge rushers.
Okay.
I think people who are really in on length are going to like this guy. I remember that was the big conversation back when he was sort of a buzzy like redshirt junior, a guy who was talked about maybe declaring out of Texas Tech. His arm length was really impressive for a linebacker. He's got 34.5-inch arms. And I think that's probably what got him to the Hula Bowl, is that impressive length.
Yeah. Oh, he had 4 sacks at Texas Tech and 3 the year before in Syracuse. That's what ESPN is.
Not great production as uses a 5 technique primarily.
Yeah, it's so weird.
I know.
Okay, Greg Penn from LSU, Noah.
All right, so speaking about game reps, this guy started 27 in the last 28 for LSU. He's got the experience, and it shows up in his mental acuity. He has an understanding of where to go. He has an understanding of where the ball is going. He's really good at flowing with runs. He does not have sideline to sideline speed naturally, but I think he has sideline to sideline range because he has an understanding of where he needs to be at that point in time. And that is just invaluable. I value that high. Good instincts, good diagnostics, good ability to read keys. I really like that. So he's a player right now that I still have a 7th round grade on him, or a 7 to a 6, but it's mainly just because he's a little undersized. It's not really, he just hits his hands at the point of contact. I just don't think his hands need to develop. In the East and West Shrine Bowl game, I think when he's taking on climbing blockers, his hands are extremely inaccurate. I think they're late to shoot. I don't think they're extremely powerful. And I just want to see him be able to defeat blocks. And because he knows where the ball is going. He understands how to scrape over. He sees pulls, read keys very well. He triggers downhill very fast. He's a good, okay linear athlete. So he's able to get there and be in the place to make plays. But it's just and he's a really tackling consistent, by the way. I think his missed tackle rate's like a little over 5%. It's one of the best in the NCAA. So when he's in position to make plays, he capitalizes routinely. It's just when he does get there to make the play, he's routinely getting washed down or scraped out by washed down or kicked out by climbing blockers, just because his lack of hand usage and that length at the point of contact really show. I just want to see him in the Shrine Bowl game really show that he could defeat these blocks and complete his run fits and keep his gap integrity really good.
I like that for him, especially as a guy who's a little less of a athlete. I think anytime you can pick up more reps as a pass rusher or run stopper doing that, I think it's smart.
Yep.
Okay, Seth Coleman from Illinois.
Yeah, Seth Coleman was a guy I was really in on going into the season. I mean, if you listen to our other edge rusher podcast, and I was talking with Jared and I are really high on these Illinois edge rushers. Seth Coleman sort of playing more of an outside linebacker role than Gabe Jacas projects to be. But Seth Coleman's no slouch in and of his own right. Good length, really good hand usage. I really appreciated how much he could do some good work on the edge as an outside linebacker. And I think that's what I'm really interested in. Is he more than just an edge rusher? Because Illinois was not asking him to drop into coverage a ton. They were using him as a designated pass rusher a decent chunk of the time, because that's just how their scheme's set up. Those outside linebackers rush the passer. They don't do the Brian Flores thing where they're dropping a lot into coverage or like being asked to take on different roles. Coleman was as pure of a pass rusher as they came, but he dropped some decent weight this year. There was a time where he was playing, I think, in the like high 240s, low 250s range. So I think he's betting on being a little bit more versatile, and I want to see that at the Hula Bowl. I want to see him carry on what I think is a really good tight end group. When I was going over some Lindy stuff, we had the Shrine Bowl group actually better graded than the Senior Bowl group. So go for Galco on that. So I want to see him use some of his edge athleticism, which I think is really great for an edge. I'm projecting him to run in some 4.6 range, but for a linebacker, it's not as high quality as it could be. Some of these guys are running 4.5s. Like he's not going to beat Power Eccles in the foot race is all I'm saying. But Coleman's no slouch athletically in his own right. And if he can use his athleticism as well as showing off some of these instincts and pass coverage that he may not have gotten to show as much at Illinois, but he may have in his bag somewhere. I mean, I just don't know. I haven't seen it a ton on tape. I want to see him, show up against these tight ends and pass coverage and show that he can really make a tackle too. I thought that was really where he was strong. He was very good play finisher, especially earlier in his career. I think he had a little bit of sack regression this season in comparison to last year. Let me check on that real quick. But I think that over the time, yeah, he only had 3 sacks this year. He was putting in 6 and 4.5 sack performances previously. But I think that, he's proficient as a pass rusher. I want to see him do more because if that sack regression is coming and it's going to translate to the next level, you want to do more as a pass coverage guy. You want to do more as a run stopper. Either way, I think he's someone who can make a strong tackle. He's someone who can finish a play, and I think that'll do well for him on special teams. And I think that requisite athleticism is going to find him a space in the NFL. I have him graded late day 3, a little bit, probably close to the 5th round, somewhere in there. But I think a strong performance at the Hula Bowl should solidify him as a draftable talent and should sort of, answer some questions whether he's going to play full-time edge or full-time linebacker. I think it'll be interesting to see. I think there's still a chance he reverts back to edge. I think this is sort of a make or break moment for him where he decides to play, where he decides to project himself in the NFL. That's going to determine that combine invite, which I hope he gets because I really like him as a player.
How do you feel about his flexibility as a rusher?
I think he was a little stiff. I mean, just sort of generally, he doesn't do a lot of lateral moves. He's a guy who wins on power and not like speed and agility. You're never going to catch him 100%. doing like a head fake and going around. You're going to catch him throwing his arms out and trying to push a guy back. He likes a bull rush, but if he could get some flexibility in his game, he could be a world beater. I don't know if it's there.
He's not good flexibility.
I don't know if it's happening.
Do you think that he should add more weight? Back up to that 250 because I was watching Jackets earlier in the season, like probably his 2023 tape, and Coleman looked huge, like way bigger than 230.
It was like Coleman lost a coin toss between him and Jackets because they were both playing at like Jackets was a little heavier. They asked him to add 12 pounds still. It was like they were like, okay, one of you has got to drop down just based on the role we need to fulfill in this offense or in this defense. And Coleman was the one who got asked to drop weight. If I'm his agent, I'm getting him back in the weight room. Just straight up. I like him more at edge, but I think if he wants to play linebacker, he needs to show off some of that pass coverage because he's a cool athlete for the edge position. He's a middling athlete for the linebacker position, and I think instincts are going to be what makes or breaks his linebacker designation at the next level.
Yeah, an NFL weight room is going to benefit him so much.
For sure.
Do you see Coleman as better for 3-4-4-3, or you don't think that's important?
It's probably a little important. I would probably want him playing 3-4 if I could choose, but a 3-4 team is more likely to use a higher pick on him is what I'm thinking. Like if he's going in that 4th to 5th range, it should be with a 3-4 team. If someone's using a late round flyer on him, then maybe you can throw some of that like scheme out the window. But if you want to use him to his best potential, you'll either ask him to add weight to get to an edge rusher weight, or you'll ask him to play 3-4 outside linebacker.
Okay.
Yep.
Hey, Aaron Smith, Cole, is this one you?
Yeah, I think me and Dean are both talking about him, but I'm cool with going first. 6'2", to like 22, 23 type area. FCS level at South Carolina State. But he's a great athlete, especially at that level. Sideline to sideline, he's a killer. His hip mobility is sick. He has that like I love that like 6'2", 220, 225 range for my linebackers. That's just kind of where I am. I like the finesse, stack and shed, and that's really what Aaron Smith does well, is just quick rip, dip, whatever he needs to do to get moving linemen off of him or tight ends off of him. Sick athlete, like I've already harped on. Interesting fact here. He played for 3 different defensive coordinators and 3 different schemes while at South Carolina State.
Yep.
So there should be no problem at what he's about to do to these poor offensive players at the East-West Shrine Bowl game, because this kid is smart. Well, he's older than me, but he's smart. He's super smart. 3 defenses in 3 years is not an easy feat, especially at the Mike linebacker position that he's at. So I'm just waiting for him to tear up the Shrine Bowl game specifically, not necessarily just see how he does in the drills and the individual things, because I know he's going to go out there and cover well. I'd like to kind of see him. I'd like to see that tackling technique improve. He does play. He is light, but he tackles light as well, which it shows up on tape. But overall, I do really like Aaron Smith a good bit. I have a 5th-round grade on him, so that could definitely go up to a 3rd at most with a good Shrine Bowl performance.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I think that athleticism is really going to do him well at the Shrine Bowl game, and I think that's sort of where I'm sitting with him. Is that he's been playing at the FCS level. He's shown he can do it all at the FCS level with that with that defensive coordinator churn. There's not a scheme at that level he can't handle himself in. There's not a player at that level that he can't handle himself against. But we're going to be putting him up against some of the best. I think the wide receiver group at the Shrine is better than it's ever been. We're going to be putting him up against some really great offensive linemen as well. I think it's a matter of if that athleticism is going to and I think it will. I really believe in Aaron Smith. I think that it's going to be a convincing performance for him, and I think that he's going to alleviate these FCS concerns. But I think that's what he got this Shrine invite for, and that's what guys who are coming from teams are going to be looking at. They're like, okay, he dominated at South Carolina State. He dominated all these guys who are not all NFL prospects. These guys he's coming up against are some NFL Day 3 guys who are going to be the types of guys he goes up against at the next level. If he can continue that streak of dominance, Aaron Smith is going to be a guy who we're talking about early Day 3 at the 4th round juncture. One of those linebackers who it wouldn't be shocked if he's a sneaky back half of the 3rd round pick. There's always a linebacker every year who jumps up 3 rounds just shockingly. I wish I could think of one example, but
Terrell Bernard.
Yeah, exactly. That guy. I think he's one of those guys who could really benefit from just a guy like a scout looking at him, seeing all these schemes he's played in, seeing all the work he's done at South Carolina State, then seeing him go to the Shrine Bowl and do the same thing against these top end players. It'll eliminate he's already eliminated any ounce that he's going to be a scheme specific guy. Now he needs to prove that he's not a talent specific guy too. He's not just an FCS all beater, world beater. He can be a guy who also world beats Power 5 players, true NFL prospects. I think you've got a great eval on him. I think his stack and rip ability has been great. I think you've got a great eval of the player. I think he's going to show out for you at the next level.
To jump off what you guys said real quick, when you guys are talking about the stack and rip thing, he's so adept at dropping his shoulder to beat blocks. It is so fun to watch. He is a fun player. Can't wait to see him in the Shrine Bowl.
So, a couple questions. So, is the 6'2", 218 accurate?
I think he's a little bigger.
Yeah, he's
probably 23.5-ish.
Yeah, he looks a little bigger.
Okay.
He is built. He is filled out well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there were some the sheet I got with all these numbers on him said he was at 226 coming into the year. He could have dropped or added, but I think he looks about that weight currently.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It sounds like at your floor with Aaron Smith is you're getting a special teams ace, because it sounds like he would have the athletic ability to cover kicks, and there's no doubt in that. The question is whether or not he can contribute to a linebacking room as a linebacker.
Yeah.
Right. And it sounds like there's already I think Dean, you said 5th round grade already, right?
Yeah, I think that's where both of us came in on, was around 4th to 5th range.
Yeah.
I might even be higher than Cole.
Yeah. I'm definitely, I think I'm higher on the potential of good Shrine game. Yeah, I'll definitely bump that up to a close to 3rd round grade. But right now it's the level of play that is concerning. I just want to see him prove that he is the best athlete out there at that position on the field. And to, I think, Dean's point of the linebackers that'll go from a 5th or 6th round grade and jump up to round 3, Tyrone Hopper last year.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I had to check on that because I knew there was somebody, but yeah, it's a common occurrence.
I was so happy Hopper got the move up. That was a guy I'd been banging the table on for the whole draft cycle, and he finally rewarded me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Teddy Buchanan from California. So who had Buchanan?
Let's see. I mean, I definitely watched Buchanan.
Go for it, Dean.
Yeah, Buchanan, UC Davis transfer. Sort of a bigger guy. For a while, there was a period of time where he was playing at 248. He's dropped a little after moving up to Cal Berkeley. I think he's as instinctual as the best of them. I think he is one of those guys who UC Berkeley is a great school. I bet he does very well athletically if his instincts on the field are as good as his instincts at the books. I think he's a really smart player. I think he diagnoses coverage well. I think he is generally just knowledgeable of, like, I felt like he was always in front of where the ball was going to be before it was at. Like, he knew what the read was going for. He knew the first read. He wasn't he wasn't getting head faked at all. He was really good about like manipulating eyes and finding a way to get in front of the ball and getting to the ball carrier. The problem was that sometimes being an FCS athlete moving up, you lose a little bit of that athleticism. Like a guy who is probably proficient or even good of an athlete at the FCS level becomes average or below average at the P5 level, especially at ACC. Some of his games were really rough where you could tell he was moving to get to that ball, but the ball was just coming out faster than he was, and he just wasn't getting there in time. I want him to, he's dropped 15 pounds. I'm hoping that boosts his athleticism a little. I'm not totally confident in that. I think he probably still is going to be around 4.7s. But if he can show that that the athleticism is boosted up from that and that he can keep up with some of these receivers or tight ends even, I think he's going to be a guy who earns his money covering tight ends and knowing when the ball is going to them and just getting out in front of it, knowing how to use that leverage. I think he's really good at developing leverage against tight ends. I think he was someone who, over time, it took me a little bit to get really into him as a player because I think he starts out slow and sort of heats up as the game goes on once he figures out what a quarterback's rhythm is. But if you can have him on the sideline, sort of like diagnosing a guy, get him in the second quarter and like be like, okay, here's what I'm going up against. Here's how we're going to go and play him. I think he's a guy who could easily be like sort of a quarterback of the defense type, sort of help direct other defensive players to be like, okay, this is what we're taking on. I thought of him as a very cerebral player, and I think that's sort of going to be where how he sticks around in the NFL. Is just, I think his instincts are great, and I think his knowledge of the game is great. I even liked listening to him in interviews. I caught a couple post games interviews of him. And I really enjoyed, sort of hearing him talk about what he brings to the game. I thought he was a fun guy.
I'd love to, just before we move on, just kind of quickly talk about him because I really loved watching Buchanan's tape. Just straight up, just the comp I have for him in my mind is Josie Jewell. Smart player, physical, run stopper, good coverage instincts. This is going to be a guy he's going to not mess up badly, but he's going to take a drive or two, get completely adjusted, and then just like completely throw a loop on that quarterback or the opposing offense just because he is that smart. But it's kind of weird. He's like a visual learner, which I don't normally see at the linebacker position. Like I don't like Dean was completely right. He does need to get settled in, but when he gets settled in, he's like on fire the rest of the game. But it's just really weird that after like all the preparation, and he's super smart, no doubt about it, like he just needs to see it and be out there and feel it before he really just dials it all in completely.
I think to that point, you mentioned his run stopping ability, which I wish I'd touched on. I think that's where you sort of get him heated up, is let him do some run stopping first, let him get some rhythm in, and then let him loosen the pass coverage. You've got a guy who can play 3 dimensions.
Yeah. Okay. Francisco Mauigoa from Miami.
Yeah, I think this was me as well. Yeah. I loved Mauigoa. I thought Mauigoa was going to sort of solidify himself as a top 5 linebacker to begin the season, but some really uncomfortable tactics just sort of developed in his tape from one year to the next. He was missing more tackles this year than I really expected with him. I used to consider him a really sure tackle, even a really strong guy. This year, the missed tackles really started to rack up, and I think that's sort of why he's playing at the Shrine Game and not the Senior Bowl right now. Because even though I had him going in as a linebacker who I had rated above Barrett Carter as the best ACC linebacker, but this year it seemed to have fallen off a little. He definitely did some really good work pass rushing this season. He put together, I believe it was he put together 2 sacks. He's put together better pass rushing performances in his history. I kind of expected him to go more into pass rushing movements over time, but that wasn't something that really happened. I thought he was going to add weight and then he cut it. There's just sort of I don't know. I've never loved the way Miami runs their defense. If I'm being completely honest, I feel like they have a habit of doing this to players where I'm super interested in their junior tape, and then they just sort of languish in the Miami defense for a while. And it sort of happened where I was happy when some of their team transferred to SMU, like Jared Harrison Hunte and Jafari Harvey, and they started to put together seasons that they had in their like redshirt sophomore years. I think Miami has a habit of topping out players and then not letting them continue the journey they were heading on. And I think that's going to be where I hope the Shrine Game comes in. I hope whatever coordinator, whatever coach gets his hands on Mauigoa is able to sort of remember these glory days of him where he was putting together 7.5 sack seasons and think to themselves, okay, this is a guy I can trust to really rip through guys downfield, do some shedding ability, and even I can still drop him back into coverage because he's at the weight he's at now. But I want to make sure people remember that he has strong hands, he has strong arms, he has even some pass rush moves in his arsenal, which is kind of rare for a linebacker his size. I want them to remember the player he was and not the player he showed off last season. And I want to make sure his tackling technique is cleared up. Dear God, please come back to like consistency like he was last year. It's not like he wasn't putting together a really strong tackling season. He still had 96 tackles, but he could have had 120. Like that's just sort of the way it is. And I also would like to see a little bit of that athleticism shown in coverage. I think he runs pretty well. But like it's more of a straight line thing. If he can sort of do some better work in carrying a tight end across the sideline, that was where he sort of held some problems in the ACC last year. He was not taking on Jake Briningstool like I wanted him to, and I think it's time for us to to bring back 2023 Mauigoa and leave 2024 Mauigoa in 2024. 2025 Mauigoa is going to be a new guy with the help of whoever is coaching him at the Shrine Bowl. Please, I need to not look stupid for having him like linebacker 2 preseason.
Okay, so before we go on to the next player, I want to just pause and kind of let Dean, Cole, and Noah kind of introduce themselves to everybody, let them know where they can find their content. So, Dean, you want to tell everybody kind of who you are and where they can find your content?
Yeah, you can find me. I'm a contributor on the YouTube channel 2 Minute Drill. You may see us around if you put in a scouting prospect. I just had a Harold Fannin Jr. video go up. So if you Google Harold Fannin Jr. 2 Minute Drill, you'll hear my analysis on him. I'll be doing 3 videos in the month of January and February. Probably should be doing about 10 videos in the cycle. You can find me there. And you can also find my work in the Lindy's Pro Football Draft Guide. That's going to be hitting Barnes & Noble sometime in March or April. So hopefully you'll be hearing a lot of my work this draft season. I'm hoping to continue being on these podcasts as well. So you can find me at DeanIsTired_ on Twitter, regular at DeanIsTired on Instagram, and you can hear from me talking ball here, 2 Minute Drill, and in the Lindy's Draft Guide.
Cool. Cole.
Yeah, you can find me at all lowercase, Cole P _NFL on Twitter. I post everything about the draft. Sometimes I voice my opinions about Alabama or other NFL teams, but mostly I stick to the draft. You'll see me be fired up about a lot of players on there. So I'm very loud about where I want to place my flag and how I feel about players.
Well, and we want to hear that loudness on the podcast, Cole. Like that's content that's going to make people come back for more. Noah, your first podcast with us. Again, welcome to the channel. Hopefully you weren't too nervous or anything like that, but you want to tell everybody kind of who you are and where they can find you.
No, not too nervous, but all capitals, NTB _43, mainly just post on Twitter, just daily draft content. Like to put my opinion out there. Just like scouting, hopefully to get into a better, more secured position later. But currently just Twitter.
Okay. So you can find daily draft content if you follow the NFL Draft Fanatic right there. That NFL Draft Fanatic right there. So on Twitter, on YouTube, there's podcasts like this that are coming at you every day. So this was a unique set of players. You know, we have people like Dean, Cole, and Noah, and I'm like, okay, so what are we going to do? Okay, let's do Hula and Shrine Bowl linebackers. I figured if there was going to be players that are, let's say, going to be diamonds in the rough at the Hula and Shrine Bowl, it's going to be linebackers and defensive backs, according to me. just based upon percentages. So we're looking kind of for some of the diamonds that maybe not everybody's evaluated or everybody's heard of. We're going to cover them here, but you can find scouting reports for the top 175 players in the draft on the Draft Professor YouTube channel, right? You can see Dean and Jared doing some offensive lineman and edge. You can see Cole doing some wide receivers. This is Noah's first podcast, but he's definitely going to get his chance to cover some of the top 175, and you'll find all of that content on the YouTube channel. So a little bit later on tonight, so this is 8 p.m. Eastern as we're talking right now. At 9 p.m. Eastern, there's a different podcast on the positions that you would build a team around. So if you're looking just for more content, it's going to be just more of us talking ball and having fun, and that's kind of what we do here at the Draft Professor. So there's 21 people that are helping put out daily draft content, just like Noah, Cole, and Dean are doing here. So everybody's going to get a chance to talk about Jamin Dumas Johnson. And I didn't put the school there, but the school is Kentucky. So we'll start with Dean, go to Cole, go to Noah. But Dean, what do you have on Jamin Dumas Johnson?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would say this is probably the best linebacker at the Shrine Game. I was really happy to see him get an All-Star Game invite. I'm a little surprised it wasn't higher, but maybe Galco just did that thing he did with Shedder Sanders and got him going. I mean, Galco seems to pull more guys year after year. I'm a big fan of the Shrine Bowl culture. I mean, Dumas Johnson, I think, is one of those guys who is just sort of a high floor prospect just because he brings a lot of great requisite athleticism that he carried forward. He was a Georgia commit originally. He didn't start his career at Kentucky. But he showed up in Georgia pretty well early as a freshman, and he sort of carried on consistent play throughout his career. He's always been a pretty good pass coverage guy, a pretty good run stopper, a pretty good athlete. He's someone who's just carries on a solid 7 in a lot of aspects. He's not got one world-beating trait, and I think that may be what stopped him from moving to the next All-Star Game level. He's not someone who is an absolute world beater. I mean, that's sort of why he was at Kentucky at the end of the day, was because he wasn't quite the type of guy that they were looking for at Georgia. But that doesn't mean he's a slouch or anything. He's lovely in a lot of situations. I think he's a really great coverage linebacker, especially because he's really fluid. I think that's one of those traits. For a guy who's 245, I was shocked at how well he moved sideline to sideline, even side to side, and even into his back pedal. I thought he was very good, sort of like at all the compass directions of the field. I thought he carried out some really strong athleticism. I'm excited to see how he does. I would like him to do a little better about navigating in traffic because I think a little bit his brain gets a little bit like it slows his instincts down when there's a lot of moving parts in an offensive play. I think he's someone who got fooled by trick plays a decent amount. When I was watching Kentucky, I felt like he bit on fakes more often than most of the linebackers that were playing at the SEC level. So I want to see him sort of calm down, play a little less frenzied, and learn how to navigate that traffic, learn how to navigate sort of a more complicated play, because I think he does a lot of great work in terms of, when it's simple. I want him to do that similar great work when it's complicated.
Cool. Cole, what do you have?
3 words: Brian Flores scheme. That's like my go-to. If you're not a true Mike, which I don't think Dumas Johnson is, and you're a thick, stockier, stubbier type of linebacker, you are automatically going to get a comp in the Belichick defensive tree. And to me, this is like not necessarily how good Dante Hightower was. I'm not saying Dumas Johnson necessarily is Dante Hightower, but this is the exact sort of field player, thumper, overly aggressive on fakes, especially earlier in Hightower's career. This is a guy you can have play that outside linebacker role, which I would really like him to sort of be in, is that Will Sam type of role. Drop him into flats on the outside. Honestly, could probably have him guard sort of those power slot tight ends or even those power slot receivers. Like, you can match him up very well. Bring him to New England in that Mayo system, who was under Belichick, and have him line up against Dalton Kincaid. That's kind of what I can see Dumas Johnson doing? And while I don't necessarily agree with Dean's point of he is the best linebacker at the Shrine game, because of somebody we'll talk about later, I do like Dumas Johnson. He was my guy early. I had about a third-round grade on him. It has dropped to a fourth or fifth. But with that being said, you put this guy in Zimmer, Quinn, Flores type of defense. I could totally see him teeing off on a green dog type of blitz, just getting the go ahead to go fuck up a quarterback, and that's what he's gonna go do.
So Noah, what do you have in Dumas Johnson?
Yeah, you guys stole my scouting report. I agree. If you get this guy in the right scheme and the right role, I think he's going to be a good player. He's got that dense, compact frame with that springy lower half. He flies all over the field. He does have that sideline to sideline range, like Dean said. I do think, like to Dean's point though, when you said there's a lot of moving parts, I feel like his instincts end up going a little down. 100%. I saw that on tape a lot. I'm a little lower on Dumas Johnson than you guys are, but I do like the athleticism that he brings, and I do think that if he gets in the right role, I do think that he could be a very productive linebacker at the next level. Maybe not super productive, but he could play for sure, and I do think this is a core special teamer at the next level immediately.
Cool. Okay, and saving probably the best for last. So Noah, do you want to kick off Chris Paul from Ole Miss?
Yeah, sure. This is the best linebacker in the Shrine for me, personally. He is just super instinctual. I mean, this guy has splash plays every single game, routinely just shooting through gaps and just great instincts to trigger downhill. I love the fluidity and the move set that he shows and displays in the run game, and just in general, I think he has sideline to sideline range. I really liked the movement skills, and I think he has adequate play strength too, because a lot of guys in the linebacker class, if they have good movement skills, their play strength isn't up to par. I think that he's one of those guys that it pairs very well for him. And I think that his technique tackling is very consistent. I think that he is a routine tackler. He's very consistent when he's in that role, and I think he's routinely near the ball. I do have a little – I don't think that he's honestly amazing in coverage, to be frank. Moving backwards it's okay as a zone dropper. I do think he could show at the Shrine Bowl that he's a little more comfortable, that he has a little more comfortability in zone, especially. And I think that he can rise even further, because I think right now consensus has him like 3, but I've seen people that have him like top 50. I think that he can keep rising. Yeah, not top 50 range, Dean, for you, but no, I could definitely see him rising up from. I mean, I have him as a top 100 player on my board right now. I just really love the fluid move set. I really love the instincts. I really love what he brings to the run game. 100%. I just really want to see him take on blocks a little better at the point of contact, and I just want to see him in coverage just be a little more alert and aware.
Okay. So Dean, we'll have you do Chris Paul, because I think Cole's going to give it a big finish. So.
Yeah,
I'll set the floor before Cole takes it to the ceiling. I like Chris Paul, right? I think he's cool. There's a lot of fun things about his tape. I just think that he is a deeply inconsistent player. Not that's what I was looking for at the next level, is just consistency in all aspects. His highlight reel is super cool. I'm excited for him at the Shrine game. He's going to put together one of those clips that goes viral on TikTok, and everyone's going to be talking about him like in the top 100 for the next 2 weeks. I want him to be doing that every play. And I mean, it's not an expectation that you can get that every play, but I think there's some really tough lowlights in his tape as well that aren't as marketable, obviously. Especially in the pass rushing. I think he gets blown off his spot every once in a while, which is just tough to watch. I want to see him do a little more balance work. I have him probably like fringe, like third round, maybe, or probably closer to fourth round if I'm being completely honest with myself. I really like him. I think he's a fun player. I think he is very instinctual. I think he's generally in the right place at the right time. I think just when he lapses, he sort of takes himself out of the play entirely. It's just his misses are as big as his highlights for me, and I think that's always something that's a little dangerous. Now, you want a guy who can put together a good ceiling, and I think that's why he's at the Shrine game. I think he's doing great stuff for him. I think that's a really good get for them. I think he'll definitely be drafted. I think there's no way he leaves the draft day without a contract. But I want to see consistency, and I want to see him, like you said, Noah, do a little bit better as a pass rusher, working on some technique, working on, he's 235. he's playing like he's 235. If he can play a little stronger, I think that's going to be a guy who's going to be a really good all-rounder and potentially a starter at the next level. I think that's where I think he's got starter potential. I think he's got probably like even high-end starter potential if you take him at his best. If you take his best game and duplicate it 17 times in a row, he's a top 10 linebacker. It's just a matter of making sure that consistency is in place.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Cole, big finish.
Oh,
No pressure.
Chris Paul is, and I know who's at the Shrine Bowl.
Oh,
This is the best get on the entire roster. Chris Paul's, as in my opinion, far and away the best player that is going to the Shrine Bowl. He is this close away from a first-round grade for me. And while I did say pre-show I don't like the linebacker class, there's 4 guys that I really, 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 really love. And Chris Paul is one of those 4 guys. I've already spoken on it. I love this build for linebackers, that 6'1", 6'2", stocky 220, 230 range. That's exactly what Chris Paul is. He's a solid athlete. Sideline to sideline, we're talking a different story here. He is very good laterally. He's not a great long speed athlete. It's just the way it is. It's not for everybody. Not everybody's going to be a long speed athlete. But Chris Paul makes up for it because he is the smartest person on that field at all times. You need him to hit any read key, and he's going to make sure he is hitting that and letting everybody on the defense know. When your defensive line needs to bump over a gap, Chris Paul's on it probably 5 seconds before the play's even going to start. He makes the checks on the quarterback before the quarterback can make a check on the defense. It's just the way he is. He can call out motions. Like, you want a motion from trips into a bunch set, go ahead. Chris Paul's going to fucking make sure that the entire defense knows what's going on before your slot wide receiver takes a step. His tackling technique is almost perfect. I love his tackling technique. It's probably the best in the class. Coverage-wise, sure, he's not athletically necessarily the greatest, but laterally, like I said, you get him moving pieces and checking out from you throw a mesh concept at him, he's going to fuck you up. He can pick off, he can jump man. He can let me rephrase. He can jump routes and just kind of switch off from man defenders easy. You have a shallow cross coming at him underneath, and he's working on the sort of intermediate crosser. He's going to jump back to that shallow cross because he knows the defense better than anybody else on that field does. And he's going to know where his own teammates are and where the opposing team's players are at. Chris Paul is the smartest player at the linebacker position I've seen in a while. It's just the way it is. I love his instincts. Again, Dean's lower on him. I know Noah's lower on him than I am, but still likes him a lot.
I still like him, not first round, but I still
I'm
like
not
him.
saying first
Right,
round,
like-
but I'm
Yeah,
saying
no,
like top
in that
45.
range.
Cole, you know Shadur Sanders is at the Shrine Bowl this year.
I'm
right?
well aware. I'll save that just for an episode that might be coming up eventually.
Oh, boy.
So what is he, Cole? Is he that like top 40 range for you?
Yes, easy.
Okay.
No question. No question.
For me, I think he's at like 80, 85-ish.
Yeah, that's totally fair. But this is also a guy that should be in Process Blue April 27th. you have Trevin Wallace. You have your guy to complement a smart middle linebacker by having a guy that will run through your face. And now you have Chris Paul. You get him in any team that has a Will or Sam that will eat blocks and do all the dirty work, and you have Chris Paul in there to make sure everybody knows what to do. And I love Chris Paul, if you couldn't tell, a lot.
Yeah, so Cole, if you see Seattle take Chris Paul in round 2, you think that's a good fit?
No.
Because
Jordan Brooks is my comp for Chris Paul.
okay.
I like Jordan Brooks' coverage instincts. I think Jordan Brooks is really smart. And while I am aware Jordan Brooks is way, 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 way more physical and way stronger, and it doesn't get eaten up as much on those blocks, they already have their 2 complementary type of guys. I don't love that fit, but if we wanted to talk about maybe
The Rams I don't know if the Rams have a second round pick.
they don't. The Panthers own their second round pick.
Yep.
But if we want to talk about maybe like the Rams would be a good fit, but if we want to talk about wherever Ernest Green's at, or not Ernest Green, Ernest Jones, excuse me, Titans, Tennessee.
Okay.
Get him in Tennessee, and oh my God, that's probably the best linebacker duo in the NFL.
Ernest Jones is on the Seahawks now, if that helps.
Oh shit! I knew he got
Thank you,
traded.
Dean. I was about to say I don't have it up in front of me to search.
Well, still no to the Seahawks because they do have Jordan Brooks. But if Ernest Jones was on the Titans, then I'd be all for that. Yeah.
Okay.
Bring him back.
They shouldn't have traded him.
It was terrible.
And what I was sitting here as Cole was giving his report is thinking, which teams need a linebacker badly that they would take Paul in round 2? And I can think of plenty of teams that would invest a 3rd round pick because, like, if you're drafting a linebacker in round 3, you may not need him to be an immediate starter. You might have a veteran linebacker that you don't want to give a contract to the year after. And that's why you take him in round 3. Like when Terrell Bernard, for example, was drafted by Buffalo, Tremaine Edmonds was still under contract, but he was a free agent the year after, right? And then Bernard was able to step in his second year.
My immediate instinct, if a team is going to take a linebacker in the 2nd round other than the Seahawks, it's probably going to be the Jets, right? Like the Jets just don't really have anyone there. Am I like missing a rookie that is really promising, or does their
Quincy Williams?
Yeah.
But like they need a second guy. Quincy Williams can't do it all. I'm a Jags fan. I know
they have Mosley too, who was pretty good before he got hurt.
Yeah, I know, but like
he's older.
And that team has so many holes.
If you give him support, though, you can let him cook more often.
I was going to say Jacksonville, but they have Foye Oluokun. That guy is.
Yeah, but we have no other linebackers. Yeah. Be so serious. Devin Lloyd's not doing shit for this team.
Yeah.
So we could probably sit here and carry on this conversation for a while. But it's been 75 minutes. There are a lot of you watching. Please hit the subscribe on YouTube. Hit the like on YouTube. Follow at NFL Draft Fanatic. No, I am Fanatic on X. Give Noah a follow. Cole a follow. Dean a follow. We're going to be back next Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern, same time. Hula and Shrine Bowl. I think we're doing defensive backs, but I'll check that with Dean and Noah once the podcast closes so we know what players we're going to cover. Cole, thank you for filling in on such short notice, right? This got thrown at you 3 hours ago. You were able to get some tape in 3 hours to get ready for the episode. Your work, Cole, is not lost. I recognize it. So, somebody drops off a podcast and we got people at the Draft Professor that are working their tail off to bring you content just like this. So thank you, everybody. Have a great evening. And if you're around, I'll see you in a podcast in about 40 minutes. Thank you.
See you.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast brought to you by the Draft Professor. Please follow the Draft Professor on YouTube, X, and Twitter at NFL Draft Fanatic. No, I am Fanatic. If you have a moment, try using some of the Draft Professor mock draft functionality, including a first-round challenge, a second-round challenge, rank players, and draft a team. Thank you very much for watching, and we look forward to seeing you on our daily draft podcast tomorrow.